Welcome to The Learning Curve,
a podcast about insights, inspiration and innovation in higher education. My name is Van de Poel.
My name is Sharon Klinkenberg. We are lecturers communication science at the University of Amsterdam.
And we work for the Teaching and Learning Center of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences.
Welcome back to The Learning Curve. Van, how are you doing?
Great, thank you, Sharon. How are you?
I'm fine. We're going to talk about Legos again today.
Yes.
So in our previous episode, we've talked about the Lego approach to course design, but there's even more to Legos than just course design. You can actually build with it, but you can do so much more. And we're going to find out today because we have a special guest. Ruth-Martine Huijs-Keegstra knows everything about how to use Legos in education.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So you teach, you're a trainer for the Teaching and Learning Center at the Faculty of Behavioral Sciences at the University of Amsterdam. And you actually use Legos to train teachers, right?
Yes, I do quite often. Then I walk with the Legos all around to teach our trainers. And that's just one of the most beautiful things to do. And I will explain you why.
I'm very curious. And I use Lego myself as well, but you know so much more about it than I do. So I'm as excited as you are.
Thank you.
And I hope that you will inspire our listeners as well to start reading in, following workshops on Lego serious play for educational purposes as well.
Did you know that I once won a Lego contest
as
a child?
As a child?
Yes, when
was it from this toy store?
Yes.
Yes.
You know that.
I know that because, we are, I'm sorry, but we are about the same age. And you could build then. I think I actually participated in one of those as well.
Awesome.
You won it?
I went to Legoland.
Oh my God, that's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's a nice intro.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people have very nice childhood experience with Lego, but
Yeah.
actually to invite it into your classroom, that's just an all other world.
So how do we approach this? So Legos, I build with Legos, I play with Legos. So what is the idea here?
Well, there is a difference of just some Lego blocks to use and to build, but the Lego serious play is a sophisticated method as a means for a group to share ideas and assumptions and understanding. So the idea is that you build with symbols and metaphorically you build and you have a rich dialogue about it. So a lot of meaningful solutions can come across. And I use it quite often with peer consultations, for example, a lot of teaching trainings to literally build the situation you're thinking about.
And you used it, Van?
I used it in class with my students, yes. I use it in class with students also to build a concept and let them think out of the box and tell a story to me and start a nice group discussion. It worked really well. And I think, Ruth-Martine, you can explain to us why that is. Why is it different than to just have a discussion or a conversation with someone about a topic like diversity, for example?
Yeah, so if you start a conversation, for example, on diversity, you can just start like thinking, what is it, and then discuss. But you really have to verbalize what it is. Mm-hmm. But by starting to just grasp some object, which metaphorically stands for some things, like an animal from Duplo Lego is way different than something else. And you really have an association with it. And by building some blocks, you really break barriers at so many levels. So, for example, in an intercultural classroom, it's just difficult to use language. But if you have built something, people are curious in itself.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, you had a teacher training yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked the teachers, who were at that moment your students, to build something. What did you ask them to build? And can you give an example of what one student actually did build?
Yes. So yesterday I had a teaching training which was on group dynamics in the classroom for teachers, and I let them build like cases they experienced. So they thought about cases just by building it.
So Ruth-Martine, you brought one of the sets with you and one of the buildings from one of the courses, and we see a turtle and a crate and a Duplo figure with a head and a microphone and minifigures and a flower and a spider web and a minifigure without legs?
Without legs, on a green, transparent ball and a stick in his hand.
Is that a stick or is it an axe? Or
yeah, that's
it's a hammer.
It's at least a
I
tool.
remember this.
But listeners, if you can now visualize this, It doesn't make sense when I look at it. I have no idea what it means. So it
you
comes
get
with
curious,
a story.
right?
I get curious because I want to know now what it means.
What's the explanation here?
Yeah, well, that's always the main thing of Lego Serious Play is that you get curious on the sense making of why these objects are positioned right there. So you see a student which is positioned way higher than other students. The turtle was representing a way more introvert student, for example, and the cradle was a barrier which the teacher experienced to approach the student with the spider web, which really gave some, fear is a big word, but you really could feel
uncomfortable feeling.
There was an uncomfortable feeling in it. And I experienced it. I'm just gonna explain with my hands because you really get excited. Like, it wasn't even my case, but I really feel what that person felt.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the power of Lego Serious Play, that you really get curious on all the objects.
I also see a lot of animals being used. I see turtles, but I've also seen elephants. And so it depends on what kind of animals you use in your own build, right? And so if I'm understanding you correct, you give time to think about the process. Then you give individual space to build your situation.
Yes.
That essentially start some cognitive process where you really have to think about which animals portray which role in the situation, and to wrap it all up is the most important part, or not?
Yes, indeed. You think by building. It's just a very innovative way of expressing yourself, and that's different instead of verbalizing or drawing or making other symbols. Here the object is already there and the association is there, and you maybe accidentally put it there, but it's not only about the building itself, a way nice thing to create, but what you say indeed is true. It's all about the conversation and the reflection afterwards.
Yes.
That is key, and that's why we do it in a training. That's why there are facilitators with it, to really get to the core of a problem. And also if you use it in other senses, you just want to create with other people what a concept looks like. So you have to talk and have to build along the way towards your end goal.
Yeah. Do you build alone or with other people together? Do both work?
That depends. For the peer consultation, you start by your own case. But what you can do is also build a concept or a theory yourself, and then you have to build all together how you want to function as a team, for example.
Yeah.
So you can build all together to an
to integrate interdisciplinary ideas, for example. I think there's also more to this in terms of didactics with this Lego Serious Play, where you start building by yourself, just as an icebreaker. That's what I learned in the training when I followed it, is build your tower and try to make the highest tower possible. And then, everyone uses a different strategy, you notice.
Indeed.
And then you do it together with someone else, and you compete with teams, see which team builds the higher strategy, and then which role did you take on in this team. That's already interesting to discuss. And then you can start building around a concept, and indeed, again, do it alone and then do it together, integrate ideas. So, for example, when I used it in class, this was a course about students who had to come up with a health intervention, a plan actually, a program that could prevent student loneliness.
Interesting.
So, very interesting topic. Also a very difficult topic. And you might say, well, we all know what loneliness is, but that's different to everyone. So we started this course with the Lego Serious Play, so that students, before they would even dive into the theory, because they had to design an evidence and theory-based program, we let them build loneliness, right? And then we also asked them, try to build how to prevent loneliness. And of course, we did this in different steps. But what the nice thing was that then afterwards, the students had the idea like, okay, I now have a better idea of the topic, the problem that we are working with. There was a lot of sharing of insights, where normally we would just go around and ask, what do you think loneliness? What do you think loneliness is? And students wouldn't share that much, or, just what's on top of mind. But because they had like this big bag of Legos and Duplo animals, And there was all different kinds of things. You know, you could have bridges, you could have skeletons, for example, in there.
Used quite often.
Used quite often, yes. Diamonds and money, elephants.
Sharks, I know.
Sharks, lions, everything is in there. And what they could do is they could tell a story. What I saw with the students is that they were very engaged.
Yes.
They lost track of time and they were like, yes, okay,
they were
this.
in
And
the zone, total flow.
Total in a state of flow, yes. And really thinking about this topic. And then afterwards, everyone was sharing, which is also very important, that everyone can share what they've been building. And everyone learned from each other and they actively engaged with that. And they could tell a story. And that's what I don't normally see in class. You know, when you have to motivate students to share something, and now they were engaged with it, they could share a story, they were really thinking about it and motivated to continue with this topic.
I did some kinds of similar things with drawing, but
Yes.
with drawing it's really, if you don't know how to draw, it's really awkward. So people not
Feels
really
awkward,
It starts with resistance usually. I can't draw. And here there is no competition on how well you put down your symbols.
But I had, for example, in that specific class, one student who had never interacted with Lego before, an international student, which I never expected.
Yeah.
And she at first was a bit anxious. And she's like, I don't know how to use this. And of course we started with an icebreaker exercise, etc. But it was so intuitive to her that within 10 minutes, she was so onto it. And it really helped her to think outside of the box and to organize her thoughts without having to translate them into words. She could show me what she was thinking.
Ruth-Martine, could you indicate what it requires from a teacher to guide specifically the process after the reflection? So what do the teachers need to know to guide this process in a good way?
That's a good one. Well, it usually starts with really the observation of the things which were built instead of interpreting, I think this does it mean. And of course, people are curious why and how and just explain. But by really stating what is the actual situation going on and what is the interpretation the specific person gives to the story, the sense making, that is key. So by really pinpointing others to ask questions on observing things, what is the reason this block is over there in relationship to that?
Why is it a tiger and
that
and
not
monkey?
Something else? And you can also steer towards what is like your desired situation, for example, in a case. Like, how do you want that the situation is? You really bridge a gap. But the idea in the total conversation is that everybody has their turn. So it's a bit on time management and giving everybody space, observing. But the idea is that you really get to the core. So that's why you can do Lego Serious Play in 2 minutes. You just have to have time for the sharing, for the getting deeper.
So, Vam, in terms of learning goals, where does this fit into your learning goals when you apply this? Because you have to set a stage, you have to give an assignment which they use to build, and then you have the discussion. But there's not a clear outcome in the sense that if you let the students explain their situation, you're letting go a little bit of the learning goal that you might have. But
I think I disagree with that. It really depends on in which context you are going to use it. So very important to state here is that don't start using Lego Serious Play for the fun of it. You know, you need to think about the reason that you're using it. And in my course, it was we had the time to do that, to introduce the topic of loneliness at the start of the course, because they would be working with it for 12 weeks. But if you're in a theoretical course, for example, learning about theories can be quite dry. You know? So you spice it up with examples because then students see it in context. But it's also something that you can do with Lego Serious Play, where you let students tell a story about a certain theoretical concept or a theory. And that means you're still working on the learning objective of, for example, students understand and can apply theory X, but you're doing it in a completely different way. And the outcome is that students have been actively processing information about that theory, because there's always a discussion afterwards where also the teacher intervenes, of course, and can say, okay, this is your perspective on it, this is your take on it, and if we bring that together, and we see also what the literature says on it, the teacher, an experienced teacher definitely can bring all of that together. Yeah. It's a different way of introducing content to the students and let them actively process that content. So I think it can be perfectly aligned with your learning objectives.
But that's a role for the teacher. So the student themselves, they can have their own interpretation. There is no specific right or wrong in the process.
No, it's a learning process.
And then as a teacher, you try to converge the different viewpoints and connect this to the theory that you're describing.
And of course, you don't have a learning objective that can only be covered by Lego series play or one activity. Learning objectives, you have several activities in a course that together work towards that learning objective. So also, don't underestimate the students, because as a teacher, we often need the feeling of control. With this, you let that go. And students know way more than you think. And especially with something like this, or with drawing, like you say, that's when they activate their prior knowledge.
Yes.
That's when they actually also themselves experience that they know more than they think. So as a teacher, you also let go of control. And together, you come to if we talk about theory explanation, you come to a good understanding of the theory that you're focusing on during that lesson.
Yeah, and assumptions really become clear because you see literally different objects in different ways. But the key is still to paraphrase it as a teacher, or to let the talking happen at a deeper level. So you can not just build and then quit. No. You really have to have your didactical questions ready towards like the outcome, and therefore your learning goals you really have to make clear, and also make clear to the people who are your participants, like it's not only about the building. In the end, we're working towards this. It's just a means, it's not a goal.
Explicit instruction is very important. Why are we working with Lego Serious Play today? Because we want to learn more about this theory or this concept or this phenomenon or whatever you are teaching about. And indeed, as you say, it's a means to an end, right? Just a different interactive teaching strategy. Yeah.
There are probably some constraints, right? In terms of how many students can do this, it's about how much?
Well, it really differs. We have quite a lot of Lego boxes ready for it. So if you just make smaller subgroups, you can do it with a lot of people. But one constraint is time.
Yes.
So you cannot do it in a short amount of time, but you really have to have a clear goal towards it. And it's good to have some practice with it, how to stir it, because there might be some resistance in the beginning, how to work with it, and to not only build the literal situation which goes on, but go on to the metaphorical way of thinking. Yes. And that's just a realization you have to make, and therefore needs time.
So in our faculty, teachers can follow the Lego Serious Play course, learn all about the didactics, and then they can rent the Lego set or something like that?
Yes, they can register it when they would like to reserve it.
So I don't have to bother my son with
expensive
stealing his Legos.
No, absolutely not. No, they can just come here and
yes, we just want to remove all barriers so that people can use it.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I haven't done that before, so I'm really excited. I think I'm going to try this in one of our classes.
Well, maybe even in your, a very complicated statistical concept can be made more tangible
by building it
with the students,
Yeah.
It is possible.
Possibilities.
Yeah.
Learning through Legos.
Learning through Legos, that's what we'll be doing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ruth-Martine, for enlightening us about the use of Legos in our education.
Thank
you. I can't wait to use this.
Yeah, you will love it. It's very exciting.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Learning Curve.
Produced by the Teaching and Learning Center of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Amsterdam.
Our music was provided by Peter van Dijk.
For more information, find us wherever you get your podcasts.